Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures continued. Issue number 21 from IDW. This is Crime Spree. So we get a Raphael, Casey Jones team up. So yeah, we actually start off with Splinter telling the boys that they are going to be taking the night off and instead they're going to be doing meditation. Meanwhile, Raphael is given the job of going to grab some pizza. So he ends up going to the pizzeria where a bunch of thugs show up and start robbing the place. And I thought that was funny how like Raphael dresses up in his disguise so that no one would know he's a giant turtle, including wearing a fake human mask. And then as soon as these thugs show up, he just immediately strips off his outfit and just fights them as a regular turtle. I don't know, it's just like if you didn't want anyone to see you, why did you strip your clothes off? Apparently, the pizzeria owner knows about Raphael and him being a mutant turtle, which then just begs the question why wear the disguise. Maybe it's because he didn't want other people to see him, in which case you could have just used the trench coat and the hat. You didn't need to wear the human face mask, but whatever. He strips out of his disguise and he starts fighting the thugs. And he basically just beats them up. And that's when Casey shows up. And Casey basically says that there's a war going on tonight. Basically, a lot of places are being robbed for some reason. There's just a lot of thugs out there. It's a huge crime spree, hence the name of this issue. And he doesn't have any answers. And he's deciding, well, we have a thug right here. Let's try to get some answers out of him. So Casey basically pulls a Batman, goes up to the nearest skyscraper, and just hangs the dude upside down and says, hey, I'm going to drop you unless you give me all the information. And the thug basically says, I don't know who it is. All I know is that the mastermind is after some chemicals. That's it. He hired a bunch of us to go around and start committing a bunch of crimes so that the cops would be too busy for him to sneak in and steal some chemicals. But I have no idea who it is. I have no idea where the chemicals are. That's all I know. So they leave him hanging out to dry for the police to show up. And Raphael can't communicate with his brothers. His battery for his turtle comms is dead. And Casey's just like, well, we don't have time to go buy new batteries. Like, we got to go discover who this criminal is. If we waste time, he's going to get away. And so Casey basically disguises himself as a thug. And he just walks in carrying a giant sack. And he talks to this other gangster. And he basically says, hey, fellow lawbreaker, how's it going? I have this big sack of money, but I don't know who to take it to. And the dude's just like, well, I don't know who the big mastermind is, but the butcher wants us all to meet up at this warehouse, so maybe try going there. So Casey's like, yeah, thanks. Knocks him out, and then they decide to go into the warehouse, where we see who the big mastermind is. The big mastermind is Rudolph Cabrodo. He is a one-shot, or I should say a one-episode villain in the original cartoon. His basic story is that he was a scientist who studied like reptiles and lizards and amphibians, toads, frogs, that kind of stuff, snakes. And he basically experimented on himself with Snake Villain, which turned him into this weird snake cobra human hybrid. And he kind of like in this issue, he ends up hiring a mafioso to basically help him steal a bunch of equipment and stuff. Basically, what he wanted to do is he wanted to create this giant device that would change the climate in New York to make it more tropical so that the snakes will have a better job of taking over. And basically him turning himself into the snake human hybrid, one of his powers was that he can control snakes. He can communicate with them and order them around. He was basically like a parody of Dr. Connors from Spider-Man. For anyone familiar with that franchise, which I would assume so, because Spider-Man's like one of the biggest heroes of all time. But the interesting thing was that in the cartoon, he does not work with this mafioso boss. This guy's name is Tony Vivaldi, aka the Butcher. In the cartoon, he works with this other mafioso boss called Pinky McFingers. So, yeah, same story though, basically, where he hires a mafioso boss to help him commit crimes. In the cartoon, like I said, it was equipment. In this issue, it's basically helping him steal chemicals while also creating a huge ruckus so that the cops would be too busy. So he basically monologues everything. He talks about how after he turned human, his lawyer was able to get him released by saying that he was no longer in danger. So that's how he's free from prison. And yeah, the whole turning human thing happens in the cartoon. He basically just gets like electrocuted, and that for some reason turns him human again. It's weird, but I mean, that's Saturday morning cartoons for you. I do kind of like this one panel where we see him. He's talking about how he like happily returned to his job and he had a relapse, and he ended up turning into a cobra again. And then we see like this other snake just with heart eyes. So Raphael shows up with Casey Jones. They end up fighting Rudolph Kubroda while Tony does nothing. Tony just kind of watches. There is this kind of funny line where Casey's like, this is great. I feel like St. Patrick, which it reminds me of The Simpsons with the whacking day. But yeah, this St. Patrick going around beating snakes with a bat. So Casey says, you know, this is great. I feel like St. Patrick. And Rudolph is like, that story was a myth. And Casey's reaction is basically he gets super pissed off and he says, don't you dare spread those lies in my direction, punk. And he just uppercuts him. I don't know why, but that just made me start laughing. Just the fact that this is like Casey's berserk button. Like just his reaction. Don't you spread those lies in my direction. And he just starts wailing on Rudolph. But yeah, the day is saved. April is freed. Did I mention April was kidnapped? April was kidnapped, but she's freed. Rudolph gets his butt kicked and he decides, you know what? I know when I've lost. And he just slips through into the sewers and disappears. Meanwhile, Tony is still here. And he calls his henchmen to show up to start fighting against Casey and Raphael. And I thought this was kind of interesting. I don't recognize any of these characters here, any of these other gangsters. But I do recognize this dude on the top right with the pink suit and the little rose lapel. This is Big Louie. And Big Louie appeared in the cartoon. But the interesting thing is that here, Tony Vivaldi is calling all these gangsters his boys, which basically means that he's the lead. He's in charge. He's the head honcho. But in the cartoon, Tony Vivaldi actually works, or at least in one episode, he worked under Big Louie. Big Louie was his boss. So, yeah, just a little interesting trivia for you, where I guess now Big Louie's working for Tony rather than the other way around. The day is saved. Raphael goes back home and realizes that he forgot to pick up the pizza, which is the whole reason he left in the first place. And that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures continues. Issue number 21 from IDW. I enjoyed this. I like this a lot. It's interesting to see some of these old characters again, because I completely forgot about Rudolph until I saw him again. I was like, wait a minute, I remember this dude from the cartoon, but he only appeared in one episode. But it is kind of nice, I guess, that we're seeing characters, we're seeing new characters, or I should say, we're seeing old characters return for the first time in forever, rather than just repeating the same villains over and over again, rather than every issue having to deal with Shredder or Bebop or Krang or Rocksteady or Oog, who's already appeared multiple times. Like, it's nice that we have a reappearance from a character that we've only ever seen once in the cartoon. Well, I guess also Tony has shown up twice. He showed up in one episode where he was like the leader of this mafia group. And then he showed up again where he was one of the henchmen for Big Louie. So I guess it's just nice to see some characters returning is what I'm trying to get at with my long rambling. And then, of course, just the St. Patrick line and Casey's reaction for some reason. Just I couldn't stop laughing at it. It's so dumb, but it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's just the over-the-top reaction to it, like the over-the-top anger. But yeah, this issue was great. I love this series. Looking forward to seeing where we go next. Apparently, the next issue is going to be the return of Tempestra, who I believe we've already seen before in one of these Saturday morning cartoon adventures. Yeah, I think we've seen her. I guess we're going back to repeating villains again. Hopefully, we'll get some more villains that we haven't seen before since the cartoon series appearing in later issues. So I'm kind of rambling at this point. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Later. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I still want to thank you for watching it this far, and I hope the next one is more to your liking. With that said, thank you once again, and I hope you guys and gals have a good one. Later.